In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to make indie pop rock music. And to do that, I remade a song by Holly Humberstone called Dive, and I'll break down my remake of the song's elements, the sounds of those elements, the mixing, the structure and arrangement, all that jazz. And hopefully by the end of this tutorial, you can make a song in a similar indie pop rock style to this one. Set the tempo around 80 to 90 BPM. Start off by making some piano chords. Nothing too crazy, just like a simple progression like this. And for the sound of those chords, I used a piano pad preset from Flex. And I did quite a bit of mixing on this. I'd put a Fruity Blood overdrive on there with the color turned all the way up to enhance the crispiness and just to overall amplify the sound. I put an EQ on here like this. I took out a lot of the low end frequencies, like the lowest of the frequencies, just so that when we make basses later, the low ends aren't too muddy with all that. And to give it a darker and more toned down feel, I turned down the highest frequencies a little bit as well, as you can see right there, kind of giving it a more muffled feel while also taking out some of the low ends. I put a little bit of a reverb on here with these settings just to kind of give it a more airy feel, kind of fill up the mix with a little bit more of wetness as well. And all of the elements in this tutorial except the drums are going to have a sidechain on here just so that the drums that we make later will stand out a little bit more without having to do any extra amplification that's going to distort the sound too much. Next, chop up those chords into a guitar. A good way to chop it up originally is by just going to the wrench up here with the long chords and just using the chop feature over here, and then just removing some notes here and there to kind of give it some variance to change up the sound a little bit and make it sound a little less boring than just like a constant chopped guitar like that. I use two Flex presets to accomplish the guitar sound. I use this one over here, and I use this one as well. And for the mixing, I actually just did the same exact thing as the piano chords for the exact same reasons as I said earlier for the piano chords. Next, make an ARP out of the long chords as well. And to make this ARP, all I did is I took the long chords, went up to the wrench up here, and then hit arpeggiate. And then you'll get something like this, and it sounds like this. Make sure it's in a electric guitar preset, something like that. More specifically, I use the Dark Star Metal electric guitar preset from Flex. When it's paired with the other elements, including the strummed guitar that we just made, it's gonna really help to fill up the mix and keep the rhythm going with the overall song. For mixing, I put a Fruity Blood overdrive on here with the color turned all the way up and the main amplification knob turned up a little more than a quarter of the way, really just to add some more crispiness with the color and then to elevate the sound a little bit more with the amp. I have this EQ right here, again, just taking out a little bit of the lows so that it's not muddy with the basses that we make in just a few minutes, and then the same sidechain from earlier as well, actually just 5% less. I don't know why I did that, but just relatively keep the same sidechain. Next, find yourself an acoustic guitar sample. Make sure it's upbeat in rhythm, but also just a very low, dark, mellow sound. And you can get a great sample like this on websites like Looperman, which is completely free, and Splice, which is paid for. I use both. I think both give really great guitar samples like this. Next, take the bass notes from the chords and make a bass out of it. And by bass notes, I mean like this is a G sharp chord, and then this is a D sharp chord. And the bass notes are really just the root notes of those chords like this. And all together in a bass preset, it sounds like this. And I use two Flex presets to accomplish this sound. I use this one, and I use this one as well. So make sure to get some very acoustic sounding electric bass guitars. And for the mixing, I put a Fruity Blood overdrive on here with these settings just to give it some more amplification and a little tiny bit of distortion as well with the bass sound. And then the same sidechain from earlier. Now for the drums. I have a kick. Make sure it's pretty powerful and acoustic sounding. I have a snare. I have another snare. Kind of on the acoustic side, but also kind of on the synthetic side. I have a small hi-hat loop in the background. I have another hi-hat loop in the background. I layered all of this with a drum loop. Standard rock type drum loop. And I also have a ride loop in the background to help with some texture and to keep the rhythm going with the drums. And adding a crash as well. The full drums sound like this. And the only mixing that I did on here is I put a Fruity Blood overdrive on here just to kind of amplify the sound and elevate it a little bit so that it's very powerful. Now for the structure and arrangement of this track. So this part over here is kind of like an intro, and then this part over here is like a verse or bridge or whatever, and then this is the chorus. So for the intro, all I have is a slow guitar playing. For the verse, I have the guitar, and then you introduce the bass, and then a little bit of the drum samples. I just have the kicks, snares, and then 2 of the hi-hat loops as well. And then for the chorus, you want to introduce literally everything else. You have the piano, guitar, arp, guitar that we made, bass, and then the full drum loop like this. After all that, here's the final result.
I've made enough mistakes to fill up the ocean's bay, and when it rains, 'cause it's not